Gutenberg Bibles there. They have, and it's just fascinating to me to walk in there and to look at these priceless treasures. And the last time I was there, I went with a group of people, and they had gone through the library and around to the gardens, museum, and I'm still hanging over the cases, just drooling over the works. I'd love to take them out there and look at them and just feel them, smell them. Something about the whole book. It's a precious thing to me. But it's precious to them too, because they locked a lot of them away. You can't get to them without a special pass. I don't know how you get that special pass. But they have a room back in the back. It's sealed off and climate controlled so the books don't age anymore. And they take very good care of these books. I noticed another kind of book there the last time I was there, as we were going into the library. There was another book. Evidently the spring on the door had broken as you go in, but you turn on it. And there was a book jammed under the door to hold it open. And I noticed that people went by, they would sometimes, they'd kick the book. They wouldn't even know it's there, and they'd trip over it. Now, if that book was scuffed and torn as the door was closed over it and drug over the top of it. That evening, I doubt if anybody picked the book up. It was probably left outside on the sidewalk, where the dew and the wind was free to do whatever with the book, to erode it, to damage it. It was unthought of. The custodian later probably picked the book up and threw it away, or used it as a doorstop once again. When the door was repaired, the book had probably served its purpose and was thrown away. That book serves the same function as the foot washer served in Jesus' day. The foot washer in the day of Jesus was a person who was not good for anything else. They were normally a slave in a household. They were either too young to perform any other function, or they were too old to perform any function besides washing feet. And so they were assigned to the lowly task of washing feet. And when you were assigned that task, the message to you was, you are not worth anything else. You don't have any other value to this household except to be the foot washer. And so you knew that when you were in that position, that you were at the bottom of the totem pole. I want you to think of that, but I want you to imagine too. Imagine a king. Imagine a royal monarch. He has absolute authority, absolute power. When the king speaks, things happen. People are waiting around the king, waiting for him to say something and to tend to his needs or to carry out his commands. And when he says jump, the people say how high after they've already left the ground. They're ready to do his commands. They're servants to attend to every need. He is taken care of. He is honored. And now I want you to imagine an enemy. A secret enemy. A traitor. Somebody that you have trusted as a friend, and yet they turned on you. Imagine one who, for just a small amount of money, has decided to turn you over to people who are going to kill you. Now imagine that king again, and that the king sitting in his throne room knows that he has a trusted friend who has turned on him, who has become his enemy. And the normal response to a person like that might be to have him put away, to make it very clear who that person is, and to make sure that he's put away where he won't harm you or he won't harm anybody else. And you have the power to do that. And you have the right to do that. This is the situation that Jesus found himself in John chapter 13. Jesus knew who he had come from. He knew that he was essentially God of the universe. All power and all authority had been given to him. And he knew that Judas, his friend, had decided to betray him and turn him over to his enemies. Knowing all of that, John writes that at this point Jesus rose and he displayed to the people there, to his disciples, the full extent of his love. When I read this a few years ago, I had always thought that the full extent of Jesus' love was dying on the cross. That was the supreme example of the love of Christ. When I read this and said the full extent of Jesus' love, and I read on, and the full extent of his love was shown by getting up and washing the dirty feet of the disciples. I had to do a reevaluation of what love really was. Jesus going to the cross was the full extent of the Father's love displayed to us. He sent his own Son to die. He gave his own Son and watched his Son be persecuted and crucified for our sake. The full extent of Jesus' love, as he knew who he was, and he got up and he took the form, he took the role of the foot washer who was good for nothing else except to wash dirty feet. He humbled himself, he wrapped the towel around his waist, and he began washing the dirty feet of his disciples. And then he says, do you understand what I've done for you? Do you understand what's going on here? Peter, of course, we see he didn't understand. And he said, no, I'm not going to let this happen. I know that you are more than a foot washer. You are worth more than a foot washer, and I can't let you do this to me. And we know the story how Jesus says, Peter, if you don't let me do this, then you really don't have any part with me. I need to show you something. I need you to understand what's going on here. And when it's over, he says, do you understand what I have done for you? Look at verse 12. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I know of churches who take that quite literally, and they have had foot washing sessions when they come together. They have basins that are set at the doors for people to wash their feet. We've done exercises at camp or different times with young people where we've washed each other's feet. It's been a moving experience to humble yourself, to either wash somebody's feet or to allow your feet to be washed. It's easier to wash somebody's feet, I think, than it is to allow your feet to be washed. Sometimes it's easy for me to find myself in Peter's shoes and saying, God, I would rather be the one doing than the one receiving. And yet sometimes Jesus says, you need to just receive what I have to give to you. And we see the picture of God's love as one who wants to empty himself and serve me. I don't understand that. That the God of the universe cares about me enough to want to do that. That he is involved, but it shows me a picture that God is involved enough in our lives that he cares, he is willing to humble himself, to come to this world, to live, to be born as a baby. What a humiliating existence for the God of the universe, to be born as a baby. We know the things that the babies go through and what we have to do for babies. And it's hard to think of Jesus, of God's Son, having to go through those things and submit to those humiliating sort of things that children go through as they grow up. And yet Jesus humbled himself. He was born as a baby. He grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. And yet, he never ceased to be a servant. My mission, he says, was not to be served, but to serve. To give himself as a ransom for many. He didn't have to do that. He could demand that we give ourselves as a ransom, even though we couldn't pay the price. But instead, he said, I love these people. They're my creation. I give myself wholly and humbly to them. And when he got to the feet of Judas Iscariot, I don't think he treated his feet any different than he treated John's feet. Jesus is recorded as calling Judas his friend, even when Judas was on the verge of betraying him. It's easy to love those people who love you back. It's easy to love those people who do the things that fit in with your plan. But Jesus loved Judas Iscariot and washed his feet. We know more about Judas than it says here. We know that Judas was planning to betray him. We know that he betrayed him for a measly sum of 30 pieces of silver. It was the price of a common slave. We know also from the scriptures that he was used to pilfering money from the treasury that the disciples had with them from their pocketbook. We knew that he was not a man that could really be trusted. He didn't have the mind of Christ with him, not even as much as the other disciples had. And yet, Jesus' response to him was to call him friend and to wash his feet. A king with absolute power, absolute authority, humbles himself to be nothing and to wash his disciples' feet. I love this picture of Jesus because it reminds me that I am deserving of his love. Not because of anything that I've done, but because he has decided to love me. I know in my life the things that I am, the things that I am not. I know how little I deserve the love of God. You know in your own life how much people will sing our praises sometimes. They'll say, I appreciate you for this, I appreciate you for that, you're doing so good. And sometimes it's hard to hear praise because deep inside of ourselves we know, oh, if you only knew the sin in my life, if you only knew the shortcomings in my life, you wouldn't be saying this. We know those things. And so it's hard for us sometimes to accept God's love. Peter knew that he didn't deserve for God to wash his feet, for Jesus to wash his feet. And he hesitated. He resisted. And I believe that sometimes our nature is to resist the love of God as well. And yet he opens his arms and says, I want to love you. Allow me to love you. And then he says, do you understand what I've done? I've shown you how to love. Now go and do the same. Love my people. Humble yourself and give yourself to my people, even when they don't love you back. Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Give yourself completely and wholly to him. But he said the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. Give yourself also to my people, God says. To love them. They are precious to me. Love my people. Our songbooks. Look at page 635. This song is taken from Matthew 10, verse 8. 635. The disciples at this point had been traveling with Jesus. They had been given gifts. They had been given opportunity to sit at his feet, to listen to his words. And Jesus says to them, you have received freely. Now your response is to go out and to give freely. This song echoes that verse. We have freely received, now freely give. Sing the first verse of the song with me. God forgave my sin in Jesus' name. I've been born again in Jesus' name. And in Jesus' name I come to you to share his love as he told me to. He said freely, freely, you have received. Freely, freely give. Go in my name, cause you believe. Others will know that I live. What has God given to you? What has he given to us? He's given us life. He's given us hope. He's given us peace. He's given us assurance. He says, now go and give what you received. Love each other. God has given us tremendous gifts. But sometimes we're hesitant to accept the gifts because we know how undeserving we are. And yet, he says to us, like he says to Peter, unless you accept my gift, you have no part in me. Here's my gift. And he's offering to each of us today his gift of love, his gift of mercy. He's offering the gift of his Spirit, a gift of power, to live life the way it was meant to be lived. And he says, it's here. It's for you. Come take it. He has humbled himself, come to this world, lived and died, so that we can have hope. He's offering it for you. If you want to take it, if you want to receive his gift, if you want to know the joy, the peace that only God can give, come to the front today as we stand and sing this song.